The secrets of ancient astronomy. Imagine a night sky, so dark, so deep, that you could see every single star. It twinkled like tiny diamonds scattered on black velvet. But what if people long ago knew secrets about those stars, secrets we are only just finding out now? This is a story about a very old mystery, a secret hidden in stones and shadows, a secret whispered by the wind over forgotten lands. Our journey begins not in a big city, but in a quiet place, high up in the mountains of Peru. Here, the air is thin and cold, and giant stones stand silent, watching the world for thousands of years. These stones are part of a very old city, built by people called the Incas. They were brilliant builders, and they loved the sun, the moon, and the stars. Our main character is a young girl named Maya. She has bright, curious eyes and hair as dark as a raven's wing. Maya is not like other kids her age. While they play games, Maya likes to explore. Her grandfather, an old man with wise eyes and a smile that crinkled at the corners, taught her many things. He was a storyteller, a keeper of old tales. He told her about the sky, about the way the Incas watched the stars. He said the stars were like a big book, and the Incas could read it. One sunny afternoon, Maya was helping her grandfather in their small garden. He was showing her how to plant quinoa seeds, tiny little grains that grow tall. As he knelt, his hand brushed against something hard in the soft earth. It wasn't a rock from the mountain. It felt smooth, flat. He dug around it gently, and Maya watched with wide eyes. Slowly, a piece of dark, polished stone appeared. It was round, like a small plate. The stone was not just any stone. It had strange marks carved into it, lines, dots, and spirals. They looked like tiny pictures. "What is it, Grandpa?" Maya whispered, her voice full of wonder. Her grandfather, usually calm, looked excited. His eyes sparkled. "This, little one," he said, his voice a low rumble, "is an old thing. Maybe a map of the sky." He carefully cleaned the dirt from the stone. It shone in the sunlight. On its surface, some of the lines connected, forming small shapes. It looked a bit like constellations, the star pictures people see in the sky. But these were different, more complex. There was a small hole in the very center of the stone. "It is old magic," her grandfather said. "The Incas used things like this to know when to plant, when to harvest, and even when to celebrate." Maya spent hours looking at the stone. She traced the lines with her finger. She imagined the ancient people who made it, looking up at the same stars she saw every night. Her grandfather explained that the Incas believed the sky was alive. They thought gods lived in the sun, the moon, and the brightest stars. They built huge temples to honor them. Some of their biggest buildings were like giant clocks or calendars, made from stone. They pointed to where the sun rose on special days, or where certain stars appeared. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountain peaks, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, Maya and her grandfather sat outside their small hut. The air grew chilly. Her grandfather brought out the stone disc. He had been studying it all day. "This disc," he said, "shows more than just the stars. It shows how they move, like a story of their journey across the night." He held the stone up, turning it slowly. "See these small dots? They are like special markers. And these lines? They connect the dots, showing path." Maya squinted, trying to understand. It looked like a puzzle. "What does it mean?" she asked. "It means," her grandfather replied, his voice serious, "that the Incas knew things about the stars that we think only smart people with big telescopes knew much later." He explained that the Incas knew about something called the precession of the equinoxes. That's a very big phrase, but it just means that the Earth wobbles a tiny bit as it spins, like a top slowing down. This wobble makes the stars in the sky seem to shift very, very slowly over thousands of years. Most people in the world didn't figure this out until much more recently. But the markings on Maya's stone disc seemed to show this ancient knowledge. This discovery made Maya's grandfather even more curious. He believed the disc was a key to unlock even more secrets. He thought it might lead them to a special place, a place where the Incas kept their most important star knowledge. A hidden observatory, perhaps, or a secret chamber. He had heard old legends, whispers of a celestial chamber where wise ones watched the heavens. The very next day, they set out. Maya carried a small bag with water and some dried fruit. Her grandfather carried the stone disc, wrapped carefully in a cloth. They hiked up a steep, winding path, higher and higher into the mountains. The air grew thinner, the wind colder. Maya was strong for her age, but her legs started to ache. "Are we almost there, Grandpa?" she asked, panting a little. "Patience, little star," he chuckled. "Great secrets are not found on easy path." They walked past ancient stone walls, covered in moss. These were parts of old Inca buildings, half hidden by nature. The clouds seemed to touch the mountain peak. Finally, after hours of walking, they reached a flat plateau, a wide open space. In the center, there was a circle of standing stones. They were very old, even older than the Inca city below. These stones were huge, taller than a man. They stood in a perfect circle, like giants holding hands. Some had fallen, broken by time and earthquakes, but many still stood strong. This, her grandfather announced, his voice filled with respect, is a waka, a sacred place. The Incas believed places like this were special, filled with spiritual energy. He walked to the center of the stone circle. He looked up at the sky, which was a brilliant blue, almost purple at the edges. He then took out the stone disk. He held it up, aligning the small hole in its center with the sun. A tiny beam of light shot through the hole, landing on one of the standing stones. Look, Maya exclaimed. The light beam was small, but bright. It pointed directly to a spot on the stone. On that spot, there was a faint carving. It was a symbol, unlike any Maya had seen before. It looked like a wavy line with 3 dots above it. Her grandfather's eyes widened. It's a constellation, he whispered. The 3 bright stars of Orion's belt, and the wavy line of the Milky Way, our galaxy. He explained that the Incas saw shapes in the dark parts of the Milky Way, not just the bright stars. They saw animals like the llama, the fox, and the snake. This symbol was showing them the way to something specific. He looked at the other stones. Each stone is a clue, he said. Each carving, a piece of the sky puzzle. They spent the rest of the day at the stone circle. As the sun moved across the sky, her grandfather used the disc like a special pointer. He showed Maya how the sunlight, passing through the hole, would hit different stones at different times of the day. Each time it hit a stone, it lit up another ancient carving. One carving showed the path of the moon. Another, the setting point of the brightest star, Sirius. It was like the whole stone circle was a giant clock, a giant calendar, built by people who watched the sky for a living. As evening approached, the sky turned a soft orange. Her grandfather had carefully drawn sketches of all the symbols they found. He also wrote down the times the light hit each stone. He believed these timings and symbols formed a code that would lead them to the celestial chamber. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the plateau. It felt colder, sharper. The sky quickly turned from orange to deep purple, then to black. Stars began to pop out, one by one, like lights turning on in the universe. The air filled with a sense of ancient magic. Look, Grandpa, Maya pointed. Above them, perfectly framed by 2 of the tallest standing stones, was a very bright star. It seemed to shine more intensely than the others. That is the Southern Cross, her grandfather said. A very important constellation for the people of the Southern Hemisphere. He looked at his notes, then at the stone disc. He carefully placed the disc on a flat, smooth stone in the very center of the circle. He turned it slowly until one of its carved lines pointed directly at the Southern Cross. As he did, something amazing happened. A low rumble came from beneath the earth. The ground trembled slightly. One of the huge standing stones, one that had no carvings, slowly began to move. It slid back, revealing a dark opening. A gasp escaped Maya's lips. It was a passage, hidden for centuries. It smelled of damp earth and old air. Her grandfather's eyes gleamed with triumph. The celestial chamber, he whispered. He lit a small torch he carried, its flame flickering nervously. Are you ready, little star? He asked Maya. She nodded, a mix of fear and excitement bubbling inside her. They stepped into the darkness. The passage was narrow, leading downwards. The air grew heavier, cooler. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing in the silence. Maya clutched her grandfather's hand. The torchlight danced, casting spooky shadows on the rough-hewn walls. They walked for what felt like a long time, deeper and deeper into the mountain. Finally, the passage opened into a larger space. It was a chamber, carved entirely out of rock. The ceiling was high, like the inside of a huge cave. But this was no natural cave. The walls were smooth, perfectly cut, and on the walls, something incredible was painted. Huge, colorful images covered every surface. They showed the sun, the moon, and thousands of stars. Not just random stars, but constellations, planets, and comets, all painted with amazing detail. They looked like a giant map of the heavens. Some of the images were painted with gold and silver, shimmering in the torchlight. Maya felt a shiver run down her spine. It was beautiful, magical. In the center of the chamber stood a large, stone table. On the table, there were several more stone discs, just like the one her grandfather found. But these were bigger, and even more detailed. And surrounding the table were several perfectly carved stone chairs, as if wise astronomers had just left their seats. Her grandfather carefully walked towards the table. He picked up one of the larger discs. It was heavy, smooth. He pointed the torch at its surface. Look, Maya, he said, his voice soft with wonder. These are even more detailed maps. They show the paths of planets, how they move through the sky, not just in days or weeks, but over years, even hundreds of years. Maya looked closely. She saw lines that crossed each other, symbols that looked like tiny planets. Her grandfather explained that ancient people, like the Incas, didn't have telescope, but they watched the sky every single night, for generations. They kept careful records, passing their knowledge down from parent to child, from teacher to student. They learned to predict when the moon would be full, when the sun would rise on the longest day of the year, and even when a comet might appear. He pointed to one section of a disk. This shows something truly amazing. The Incas knew that Venus, the morning star, has a very regular pattern. It appears and disappears in the sky in cycles. They tracked it so well, they could predict its movements with incredible accuracy. This knowledge helped them know when to start big events, or even when to go to war. But there was more. On another disk, her grandfather showed her a series of symbols that looked like small, repeating circles inside larger ones. This is not just about the planets, he explained. This is about the bigger picture. The Incas believed that the entire universe moves in grand cycles. They saw how stars appeared in the same spot every year, and how some special events, like eclipses, followed a pattern. He explained that an eclipse is when the moon blocks the sun, or the earth blocks the moon. It makes the sky go dark in the middle of the day, or makes the moon turn red. For ancient people, these were often scary events. But the Incas, with their deep knowledge of the sky, could predict them. They knew when these events would happen, which made them seem like powerful magicians to others. These discs, her grandfather continued, are like a giant, ancient computer. They stored thousands of years of observations. They show that the Incas understood that the earth is not flat, but round. They understood that it moves around the sun, even if they described it in their own special way. They knew the universe was much bigger and more complex than most people thought at the time. Maya felt a rush of awe. She had always thought of ancient people as simple, but here was proof they were incredibly smart. They had figured out so much about the universe just by watching, by being patient, by passing on their knowledge. But why is this chamber hidden, Grandpa? She asked, her voice echoing a little. Why is this knowledge a secret? Her grandfather sighed, a sad sound. Because sometimes, knowledge can be dangerous. When the Spanish came to this land, they brought their own belief. They thought the Inca ways were wrong, even evil. They destroyed many temples, burned many records. The wise ones, the keepers of this knowledge, had to hide it. They built this chamber to protect their deepest secrets from being lost forever. He looked around the painted chamber, a somber expression on his face. Imagine if this knowledge had been shared with the world earlier. How much faster could humanity have understood the universe? How many wars could have been avoided if people respected each other's wisdom, instead of trying to destroy it? He then walked to the far end of the chamber. There, a small opening was carved into the rock. It looked like a tiny window, pointing upwards. This, he said, is the final secret. It is aimed at a very specific spot in the sky. He explained that on certain nights, only a few times a year, a special star or constellation would be perfectly framed in that window. He described one such event, the heliacal rising of the Pleiades. That's a fancy way of saying when a cluster of stars called the Pleiades, which looks like a tiny dipper, first appears in the sky just before the sun rises. For the Incas, this marked the beginning of their new year, a time for planting and new beginnings. The window was perfectly aligned to show this. As he spoke, Maya noticed something else in the chamber. Near the window, there was a small, stone pedestal. On it, sat a smooth, black rock. It wasn't painted or carved, but it felt special. It seemed to hum with a quiet energy. What's that, Grandpa? She asked, pointing. Her grandfather walked over to it, his eyes serious. This, Maya, is a huaminca, a meteor. It is a stone that fell from the sky itself. The Incas believed these were gifts from the stars, sacred objects that connected them directly to the heavens. He gently touched the stone. It felt cool, almost alive. He explained that finding such stones was rare, and they were kept in very special places. They were used in ceremonies to talk to the sky gods, to ask for good harvests, or to understand the messages of the stars. This chamber, he said, looking around, was not just a place to observe. It was a place to connect, to feel part of the vast, amazing universe. He looked at Maya, his eyes full of love and hope. You see, little one, the Incas were not just looking at the stars. They were listening. They were trying to understand their place in the cosmos. And they understood that everything is connected, the sky, the earth, the people, the plants. It's all part of one big, beautiful dance. Maya felt a deep sense of peace in the chamber. She imagined the ancient astronomers, sitting in those very chairs, watching the stars through the small window, discussing their findings, making their predictions. She pictured them painting these vibrant maps, pouring their heart and soul into understanding the universe. Her grandfather carefully put the large stone disc back on the table. "This knowledge is not just for us, Maya," he said. "It is for everyone. It reminds us that no matter how much we think we know, there is always more to learn. And that even the most ancient people held wisdom that can still teach us today." He explained that the Incas also watched for special events like supernovas. A supernova is when a very big star explodes, becoming incredibly bright for a short time. They would have seen these rare events and interpreted them as powerful signs from the gods, recording them on their stone discs and in their oral histories. This showed an even deeper level of astronomical observation, going beyond just the regular movements of the sun, moon, and planets. They spent a long time in the chamber, taking it all in. Maya felt as if she was touching history, touching the stars themselves. Her grandfather told her about the Inca calendar, which was incredibly accurate. It was based on the cycles of the sun and the moon, but also on the appearance of specific constellations. They had a system of 12 months, each with 30 days, plus 5 extra days to make up a full year. This showed a very detailed understanding of time and the sky's movements. He also spoke of the concept of the chacana, a step-cross symbol sacred to the Incas. He explained that this symbol was not just a design, it was a map of the universe, a way to understand the cosmos. It represented the 3 worlds, the upper world of the gods, Hanak Pasha, the middle world of humans, K Pasha, and the lower world of the dead, Oku Pasha. And it was aligned with the 4 cardinal directions, and with important star patterns, showing how deeply their spiritual beliefs were woven into their astronomy. As they finally prepared to leave, her grandfather turned to the small window, through which a sliver of the night sky was now visible. A single, bright star twinkled in its frame. "That star," he said, "is our guiding light. It reminds us to always look up, to always wonder." They carefully made their way out of the hidden passage, the torchlight fading behind them. The huge stone slowly slid back into place, sealing the chamber once more. The mountain returned to its silent watch. The stone circle stood quiet, just as it had for thousands of years. But now, Maya and her grandfather knew its secret. As they began their descent, the stars were out in full force. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a glittering river. Maya looked up, no longer just seeing pretty lights, but a vast, ancient story. She understood that the stars were not just faraway points of light. They were a living, breathing map. A map that the Incas, those brilliant sky watchers, had read and understood in ways that still amaze us today. She knew her grandfather would share this knowledge with others, slowly, carefully, to protect it while also letting its light shine. This secret, hidden for centuries, was a message from the past, a message about human curiosity, brilliance, and the endless wonder of the universe. And Maya, the little girl with curious eyes, now carried a piece of that ancient sky secret within her heart, ready to look up and learn even more. The night sky felt bigger, deeper, and infinitely more magical than ever before.